Dennis, we spoke last in January. You said then genocide has been raped like the word racism has been raped. Every decent term has been neutered of its meaning by people on the left. A lot more people are now using the word genocide about what is happening in Gaza. Have you moved your position at all in relation to the proportionality of Israel's response?
The term has been denuded of its real meaning, as have so many others. I just want to reflect, and I know Reza Aslan knows a good deal about this. When Pakistan was formed, there had never been a Pakistan, whereas there have been two Israels prior to this. This is the third Israel in that area. The only independent states that ever existed in that area were Jewish states. And the creation of Pakistan, which had never existed, resulted in 7 million refugees and over 1 million dead people. There were about 10,000 Arabs that died when Israel was created, 10,000 versus 1 million. Nobody gives a hoot about what happened there. Nobody cares about the hundreds of thousands murdered when Bangladesh was formed out of Pakistan itself. The reason people are using the term genocide is because it's Israel, and there is a universal hatred on the left, not among liberals, not among conservatives, on the left, against Israel. That is the reason. The term has been denuded, and this is a very bad precedent to set, because people will no longer take the term seriously, just as they no longer take the term racism seriously.
Right, and you sort of articulated that when we spoke in January, but my question was specifically whether your view of what's happening at the moment, whether what Israel is doing has now crossed a line. You know, you've got the United States president, you've got Chuck Schumer, you've got others intimating they think this is enough and that Israel needs to stop just pounding the hell out of Gaza and killing people.
Chuck Schumer asked for Israel to have elections. So the first thing to be said is, I don't know when America has ever asked a democracy to change its government. It may have, but I don't recall it in my lifetime. Secondly, the opposition in Israel, the leftist opposition or liberal opposition, depending on the term you wish, has announced, if we are in power, we will prosecute the war just as Netanyahu did, and they loathe Netanyahu.
Right, but I'm asking what you think.
Yes, no, they have. I don't. I attribute every death of a Palestinian to Hamas, just as I attribute every death of a German in World War II to the Nazis.
So you have no problem with the scale of what Israel is doing?
I have a problem, to be honest. I have a problem even as a Jew. And even though the Nazis created the Holocaust, I have a problem with all the civilian deaths in Germany. Yes, and every decent human has a problem with the death of people who are not in the way of combat, and even in the way of combat. But it could end tomorrow, literally tomorrow. Hamas resigns, like Hitler and his henchmen resigned, there will be peace. And if they announce we accept the Jewish state, there will be peace. There is no example in the modern world of a free country wanting war and a police state wanting peace.
Okay, Reza, you've been sort of laughing, I think, ironically about this. But what are you finding comical about that?
First of all, let's quickly fix Mr. Prager's history here. Pakistan didn't just arise. There was a partition of South Asia and a war between India and Pakistan that led to all those deaths on both sides. And of course, our focus in the United States currently is on what's happening in Israel, not because I think we are signaling out Israel as opposed to other places in which horrific human rights violations are taking place, but very specifically because I and Mr. Prager and every American is paying for Israel's war in Gaza. I am buying the bombs and the bullets that have thus far killed, conservatively, 30,000 Palestinian non-combatants in Gaza. Nobody is pretending that Hamas is not responsible for this conflict. The murder of 1,200 innocent Israelis was unconscionable. But let's not pretend that Hamas is in charge of something that they could resign, like the Palestinian authority could resign. There is no government currently in Gaza. Hamas is a non-state terror organization that is currently under siege and running for its life. But even the Israeli military has come out and publicly contradicted Prime Minister Netanyahu to say that this idea that the goal of this conflict is to destroy Hamas is absurd. You cannot just kill off Hamas. Hamas breeds, its fuel is the grievance, the very legitimate grievance of the Palestinian people.
Could you
and
not
if
have
you have
said,
no intention of addressing those grievances...
But Reza, just to jump in there, to Dennis's point, could you not have used that argument about the Nazis? Could you not have said, look, you can kill as many as you want, but you won't kill the ideology? And yet the ideology pretty much...
The Nazis were the government of Germany.
Well, Hamas
is not
are the government of Gaza.
Of Palestine.
Well,
They're not even the government of Gaza anymore.
Well, okay.
There is no government in Gaza. You know this, Piers.
I realize the reality...
People keep saying this all the time. There was an election in 2006. You're absolutely right. There was an election in 2006, and Hamas won that election, and they were the government. That was 18 years ago. The idea that they are still the political entity, the bureaucratic entity in Gaza is absurd. They're a non-state entity, a terror organization. They unquestionably must be rooted out, but everyone knows that you defeat terrorism not just through a military way, but through political ways. You have to address the grievances that fuels terrorism. And Netanyahu has not just said he has no intention of doing so, he has repeatedly stated what we've always known about him for the last 16 years, which is that he will never allow any kind of political state to exist in the Palestinian territories. And until something like that is on the table, I don't see why Hamas has any reason to discontinue its grotesque resistance.
Dennis, I mean, that's an interesting point, because my problem about all this from the start has been, what is the end game? What happens after the end of the war? Most Israelis support the war, but they also, the vast majority, want Netanyahu gone when it's over. They blame him for what happened on October the 7th. And there's no doubt, the more we've unearthed about all this, that Netanyahu tacitly went along with Hamas having power because it suited him to have the two Palestinian groups, Palestinian Authority and Hamas, split in two. He thought that was better for Israel's security. It was proven to be a woefully ill-judged assessment. And he helped fund them through Qatar and was happy for that to happen. So Netanyahu has, I think, he's run his course, hasn't he? I mean, whatever you think of the war and its validity, and you're right, I think most Israelis, whoever was in power right now, would want to finish it. But isn't Netanyahu done?
He may well be. I don't know why that's germane to the discussion. The larger macro discussion is that we have as clear a situation of good and evil as exists on Earth today, as it existed in World War II. The Nazi analogy I have never used, and I've lived a long life. I have never called any one or any group Nazi. The only distinction I could find between Hamas and the Nazis is that Hamas publicized its butchery and the Nazis hid it. That is literally the only difference I could find. Both have announced that they desire to murder every Jew in their area. For Hitler, it was Europe. For Hamas, it is Israel. And both go about it. All the rockets that are sent over Israel are meant to murder as many Israelis as possible, if Israel happens to have a way of stopping it. But if Hamas had its way, already tens of thousands or millions of Israelis would be dead. I don't understand why this is a debate. Well, I take that back. I do understand. And that's why I use the Pakistan example. How about this? 60,000 Christians have been murdered by Muslims in West Africa. I don't charge you or anyone because this is universal. Have you had a show on it? And it's not your fault. No one cares, right? Because it's Muslims who killed those black Christians, not Jews.